Alright everybody, so as the pseudo-sequel to Cloverfield, this weird sort of spiritual successor, not exactly Cloverfield 2, but it is still Cloverfield, 10 Cloverfield Lane I think did a really good job as a movie in general. Like, despite being in the universe of Cloverfield, I think it's a great suspense movie. Um, just all the weird stuff they did for John Goodman's character, I really love. Like, he starts off, it's really crazy, and see, the thing that was interesting is, and I mentioned this in my spoiler-free review, and if you want to check that out, there's a link in the description. Um, for me, I'd seen Cloverfield, so I knew that there were aliens. I knew what was going to happen, and I was very curious, like, alright, when does that scene with the house take place? Because I thought, honestly, I just thought it was going to be the giant monster again, but they expand the universe because it's like, no, it's not just this crazy monster. It's actually an alien invasion, which I thought was very cool because in the first Cloverfield, it's just a giant alien, and that's all there is to it. It's just one alien, and then those little creatures from the first movie, like the little bugs that infect people and kill them. And I thought that's all it was again. I thought it was that creature showed up and, boom, that's all it was. And when the woman came to the door who was infected, I thought it was because of those bugs. And I knew, like, from the first movie, I think it just, like, poisoned people and killed them. But I don't really remember, so I was like, it could be a different effect or something. And she mentioned, like, oh, it barely touched me. I just assumed it was one of those little bugs or something. And then, we get the ending of the movie, and it's, like, full-on alien invasion. There's, like, the alien ship in the distance, and then the explosion from the bunker, of course, draws it near, and it drops, like, the little, like, dog type creature thing. So I really love what they did with the aliens, and I'm curious if they'll expand it to a third movie, because they've now gone from alien, creepy alien movie where it's like we don't even see the monster really, except for like maybe 2 shots or 3 shots in the first movie, to a full-on alien invasion with war, where it's people versus all these different aliens. And I don't know if they do that because, I mean, they could, but odds are, with it being in, if they wanted to do like a sort of action type of thing, it's a little difficult to do action horror, and I would love to see that done right, but I feel like it's very difficult to do that. I think I've only really seen that work in video games because it's a little different, and I've really only seen that in like Resident Evil and like Dead Space. So they're like specifically horror games, but they have like action elements in them because you can use guns. So it's a little different. And I think in the movie, considering how they ended this, and it would be very interesting if they actually kept the same character and went into a third film doing like a sort of action thing where they fight off the aliens. It would be interesting to see how they would, kind of play with that idea, like a horror action type movie. And I think Aliens might be a good example as a horror action movie. Of course, Alien and then Aliens, it is like the straight up horror movie, and then, Aliens is like the action one. But it still has its moments, for sure. So, it could be that way where it's like, alright, it does become an action movie, but it still has those really creepy elements because it's still, especially with this movie, they introduced the fact that it's way more than just that giant creature and those little bug things from the first movie. It's like living ships, and actually, now that I think about it, they introduced just 2 new things. So it's 2 things in the last movie, 2 creatures in this one, and then they could do, a combination and then even more stuff if they wanted to carry on kind of making a universe out of this thing. But I love what they did with it. I knew, like I said, I knew it was aliens. My girlfriend didn't. And so she didn't know, like, what was coming up and how things were going. And I was curious. I was like, okay, even with me, and that was the thing that I think they did really well, because even for people that saw the first movie, it's like, okay, it could be different, because for the first movie, it was a big alien creature that came to New York City, and it's just destroying stuff. So it's like, alright, very different. And then it's like, okay, the land, or, the air could be contaminated, like fallout. I knew it wasn't nuclear fallout, but then, they did have the woman, like I said, I thought it was just the bug, but when they showed the pigs, it was like, okay, that could mean something, and that was before the woman, so it was like I went from that to thinking, alright, that could just be the bugs, but we still had the pigs, and then we got the explanation, like there was a big flash of light and all this extra stuff that certainly didn't happen in the first movie. It was just an alien that showed up in that one. So I was like, even for people that saw the first movie, they did a good job where it's like, this could be, if it's Cloverfield, so I assumed it was aliens. And I was like, all right, this could be accurate though. They could be right that the air is contaminated, and it could be like a blend or two. It could be like, partly contaminated, and then outside of that, just creatures in general. So I kind of figured it wasn't contaminated, but I still wasn't 100% sure because their area could have been, just because of everything that happened. Because he saw the big flash, and I'm like, okay, that could technically be accurate. I don't know that because of what they've shown throughout the film. Even knowing the first movie is like, well, that big whole thing with the big flash and all that extra stuff, none of that was in the first movie. So him saying that, I was like, okay, maybe it is contaminated, at least where they are, because it's a totally different area. It's not New York. I can't remember exactly where they are, but I know it ends with her going to Houston. So I would assume Texas. I don't know. I don't know where Baton Rouge. I don't know where those places truly are. To be totally honest, I don't live in that area, so I don't know if it was like Houston, Texas type of deal or what. But I'm assuming that's where it was. But I like the way that they did that. I thought that was a good example of like, all right, you could have seen the first movie, but then they say stuff where it's like, all right, it's clear that this is a totally different area. It's not New York, and it's a full-on invasion, which wasn't the deal for the first movie. So I like the way they played that because it does change. Even with my prior knowledge, it changed what I was thinking about the movie, and I was like, I'm not too sure if this is the case, and it could be a blend of the two. It could have been how it happened, but maybe it already faded, which technically I guess is true because they show the gas at the end of the movie where the ship goes across and sprays everything down. So technically the air was contaminated at one point, but it did go away, and so it technically was both things. It was like it was contaminated at one point, and then it was creatures, at the other point. So it's like, okay, it was, it was pretty clear that it was both. So technically, the guy was right, but at the same time, he was still wrong. And then, of course, everything they did inside the bunker was just insanity because it's like we have this guy who's absolutely insane, clearly insane, and it was just suspenseful the whole way through trying to watch this guy. And it was really interesting because we'd have moments like, and I can't remember any of the characters' names, I'll just be totally honest, but when John Goodman gets hit in the face with the bottle and the woman, she has his keys and she takes off to the door, after she learns the truth, I was really worried. I was like, okay, the next scene, everything was actually fine. And I was like, okay, he understood that she freaked out. She thought that he just kidnapped her and like that was it. And then she saw the truth and it's like, okay, he recognized the fact that she made a mistake and he didn't just like lose his mind. And that was one of the great things about his character because it's like, okay, I instantly thought he was gonna like freak out and try to like beat her up or something crazy. And he was basically just like, yeah, sorry you had to see that, but that's the truth. And then he just left and everything was totally fine. Like she hit him in the head and basically it's just like, yeah, sorry, that's truly how it is though. And then, she stitches him up and everything's fine. And I was like, that's crazy. And then, of course, when they get busted, he totally kills the other guy, which completely blew my mind. And I didn't think he was going to do that. Like, with the whole vat thing, especially, okay, so he starts off crazy, right? And then he becomes an actual serial killer. Or I shouldn't say serial killer, because I guess he only killed one person. But he killed that girl, and I guess he put her in that vat of acid, which is why he had the vat of acid, even though I feel like that could have been a movie in itself. Like, why did he take that girl? Because we never get any explanation. It's just a part of the story where, they have to fix the air ventilation. And then it's like, okay, this is really weird. This thing says help. It's scratched on the inside. And then their earrings and stuff. And then we find out that the picture of his daughter, who I believe was named Maggie, which is crazy. That's the only name I even remember hearing. That and Ben, because I was reading it on the phone. We find out that that's not even a real picture of his daughter, which is weird. Like, why would he make up that lie? In such an enclosed space, there are only 3 people, and he's one of them. You can't tell a lie to one person through a picture. You can say it, but you don't show somebody a picture, and then, because anything random can happen, just like how it did in the movie. And it's like, hey, these earrings match this picture. He killed this girl, and, the reason that she's not in there is because he totally dissolved her body. And so he does that, and, he pops the little thing open, and it's like, oh, here's a vat. And it's like, that's effing insane. He has a vat of acid. So he kills the guy and dumps his body, which I thought he was probably just going to do something and, like, burn his hand off or something like that. And that's what my girlfriend thought as well. It was like, nope, he just killed the guy. And he completely murders him. And then it's like, hey, everything's fine. Like, don't worry about it. And he was, completely calm. And, and that was another thing. Like, of course, in that situation, you have two people, that you're confronting, and one person says something, the other person's like, hey, that's not true or something, or she's trying to say it, and he's like, stay out of it. He didn't even pick that up. It was just like he listened to what one person said, and he was like, okay, and he killed that guy and took him out. So it's just like the way they did his character, where he recognized certain things and then didn't recognize other things. It was just like, it was like he'd seemingly be normal, and then ultimate extreme where he just instantly murders a guy. And he dumps his body. He chops him up and puts his body in acid, which he'd done before. So he's already a killer. He's just already a crazy character. And it's like, this is just insane. We find out just random stuff, and it's like, I don't even know what to think about that. That's just crazy. But it was definitely a fun movie. Really love the way that they played around with the idea of him being a crazy character. And then it's like, yep, he actually murdered someone for whatever reason. He kidnapped this girl and killed her. I don't know, who knows why. It was a thing that happened apparently before the movie. So that was really weird. It's just like, it just happened. He killed somebody, and no true explanation. It became a thing. But I love the way they kind of played around with that idea. And so sadly, after he kills the other guy, a woman ends up escaping because she gets busted, but she's able to get away from him, and then she dumps the acid on him and everything, and he falls and just face all messed up and stuff. And I was like, that's pretty good how they did that. And then it just goes into madness, and then we get the aliens. So I love the way that they play with the movie. One thing that I noticed that was very weird was actually with the phone. So this, I don't know why I noticed. I do know why. It was because in the movie, when she's on the phone, it says it's like 6:36 or 6:37, something like that. It says it's like 6:30 something. And so then they showed her, do something on the radio, and it said midnight. I was like, okay, no big deal. It wasn't like a digital thing like on a lot of cars today. It was like, it looked like one of those radios you actually take out, which I thought was really funny. I was like, that looks like one of those custom radios you actually take out, which I haven't seen in a while. But I was like, it could have the wrong time. It could say midnight and the phone is right. And then after everything happened and she was in the bunker and they show her pick up the phone, she's like, oh, I gotta make a call and try to get the heck out of here. I'm like, I'm pretty sure the phone said like the exact same time or something weird like that. It said like it was 6:30 again. I was like, that is very weird. I don't know. That was just really weird to me because I'm like, it's so weird and random because it couldn't be that they filmed at the exact. It could be. It would be very odd that they filmed at the exact same time and they didn't realize that. And that's one of the things that's always weird about using phones on TV, because it's like they show what time it is, and you film until like the middle of the night and stuff like that. So sometimes it's hard to do that, and it was just really weird. I was like, okay, I saw what time it was because it was a clear difference between the phone and the clock. It was like 6:30, and the clock said midnight. And then the crash and everything happened, and she picks up the phone. I'm like, that's almost the exact same time. I don't know if that was on purpose or if that was like the craziest fluke coincidence ever in movies, but it said like the exact same time, or it was very close. If it wasn't the exact same, it was literally like a minute or 2 minutes, and maybe that was the point, is that it was like, it's literally been 2 minutes since they last showed the phone, and that was like a little inside thing or something. But I'm like, that says 6:30, and it's not 6:30 because she just crashed, and it said it was like 6:38 or something. So I just want to point that out. If you guys happen to see the movie a second time, you might be able to notice that. But as soon as they showed it, I was like, that's really weird. And another thing that was weird about the phone is when it came up, she like just touched the phone, but that's a thing too where you can just touch your phone and answer it because they have phones like that. But I'm always so used to like, seeing a symbol show up and you actually get to do that. But it was just interesting. I was like, the time, I'm pretty sure it was exactly the same, if not like a minute or 2 minutes later, but it was still like 6:30 p.m. And I'm like, that's really weird. That clearly isn't the case in real life. So maybe it was like a little joke, like, hey, it's been literally 2 minutes since we last showed the phone or something like that. But I just thought that was interesting. I noticed it. I don't know if other people did, but it definitely caught my attention, especially after the radio thing with the time being different. So I just wanted to point that out because it was so random. And I'm like, I don't know if that was on purpose or just the craziest coincidence ever, but it happened. So wanted to point that out if you happen to see it again. But overall, definitely a fun movie. I definitely see a third movie if they did sort of the action route. I think they would at least try to keep it horror based because, of course, the first movie was like the crazy alien invasion thing where we don't even know what's happening and it's people trying to survive, and it is kind of a scary movie. Especially the subway scene is probably the best scene in the first Cloverfield movie. I really like that scene because it's very creepy, and that's when they introduced the little the little bug type things because they hadn't even been in the movie yet, and they're just in like a pitch black subway, and then they're just like giant alien bugs. So that's probably like my favorite part of that first movie because it's definitely, I think, the scariest part. But it has a lot of horror in it, and then this movie, same thing. Definitely more suspense horror than like out there alien monster type horror, but still very very well done. So if they tried to do that in an action way and it worked, I'd love to see that. Even if it was just an action thing, I'd still see it because I like action movies. But I'd be curious to see how they do that if they choose to expand the universe, or maybe they just stick with individual people's stories and no one like in battle or anything. People, just normal people surviving in different ways. I think they could definitely make that work if they wanted to kind of make like an interesting series about the war, and maybe they continue the war throughout the films, and it's like we're getting closer to winning in the third film, and then they finally win at the end of the fourth or something like that, but it's never people involved with the war because the army is in the first movie, but I think that's for like a quick second, really. So they could do it that way or something. It's like we see like a scene where the people are fighting back. It's like we're winning and stuff, and then something worse happens, or something like that, and keep that sort of suspenseful element going where it's still just normal people, even if they're in the protection of the army. It's not their moment to be like, yeah, we're winning, and they just push back all the aliens, but if they kind of did it that route and stuck outside of the battles and just normal people surviving, I think it could definitely work. It would be interesting to see because this one was so enclosed. It made sense to be sort of a normal shot film, but the first one was like the big shaky cam thing that kind of introduced all those movies. So it would be kind of weird if they went back to that, now that they've done it. But it would also be weird to do like a normal alien invasion type movie and then it's just regular shot because all I'd be thinking of is the first movie where it was all shaky cam. But it doesn't. It definitely doesn't need to be. I'd prefer if it wasn't, to be personal. Um, but I'm curious to see if they're gonna do a third one. I never expected this to come out. I think the trailer basically premiered like a month and a half ago anyway, so it's like no one knew this was coming out anyway except for people that were actually working on it. And it's kind of a shame. I mean, it's great how they did it for sure, but I feel like they may or may not miss out on a lot of money that they probably deserve with this one because it's a great movie. Maybe just release that one trailer and make it that forever because I don't think I've seen a TV trailer for it yet. I think I've only seen that one trailer. I'm sure there are TV spots though because that just makes sense if it's out. But maybe just keep that one trailer and maybe release it quite a while back instead of like a month and a half ago. Because I remember when I saw the trailer the first time, I was like, that looks really, really good. And then it was like March. I was like, that's like a month from now. I think I saw it in January. It had to be January. And I'm like, that's like barely over a month from now. And it was just like, all right, I guess it's coming out pretty soon. But I was excited to see it, and it was definitely worth seeing. Of course, with this being the spoiler video, I definitely want to know like your favorite moments from the film, favorite reveals. I definitely want to know what you guys think about it compared to the first movie because I mentioned in my review, very very different films, but both really good. I really enjoyed the first movie. I thought it was actually really cool just watching how that all played out. And then this one I enjoyed a lot more because it was just really crazy and suspenseful and very tight knit, and that's probably why I liked it a little bit more because it was suspenseful with only three characters, and that makes it more suspenseful when they're trapped in this tiny location and one person seemingly is absolutely insane, which he clearly was. So I do like this one more than the first one, but it's also hard to say like, oh, the sequel's better because it's hardly even a sequel. It's just like it's the sequel, but it's not like you went from Spider-Man to Spider-Man 2. It's not that type of sequel. It's just like a totally different thing where it's almost impossible to compare the two because they're so different. They have the horror element, and that's it. Because the first one is alien invasion, and this one is like the aliens are at the end because it's the universe. So it's just different. But definitely want to know what you guys think about them, about the movies compared to each other. What do you guys think? Would be in a third film if they decide to do another sequel, and would you even care to see another sequel, or did you think this was good enough, just end it here? This was a nice pseudo weird type of sequel. But definitely want to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and like I said, definitely what you guys would want for a sequel, if you think there should even be a sequel, and definitely your favorite like just crazy moments from this one. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.